Good evening, boys and girls, and welcome to what will be part 3 of Confessions of an Adult Film Star Part 3. Now, before I begin, I just have to say that my computer did do a little bit of updating, and unfortunately, as a drawback, my equipment has ceased to function correctly, and my hacking skills cannot work with, well, such devices. So, please excuse any hiccups that might be in the equipment, excuse any weird whirring noises, because for some reason this version is making my computer run twice as fast and twice as hard. So, with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in to part 3 of Confessions of an Adult Film Star. I never believed in the concept of snuff films when I first started out in porn. I knew that in the industry there were plenty of companies that did wild and edgy stuff, but until it happened to me, I didn't know that they would kill you. Except I didn't die. I don't think I did anyway. The night Obscura made a living corpse replica of me. I could have sworn I did, though. I didn't know that it was real anymore. I didn't know what was real anymore. Except for the fact that I didn't stop hyperventilating until the Mexican turned me to my trailer. I needed to find Leah. I needed answers. I left my trailer in the same hour, desperately trying to call her. It just went to a dead email. I found my car and drove to her place, half an hour away. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I got there. I pounded on the door. Leah opened it looking like shit, like she hadn't slept a wink. She could tell without asking that something horrific had happened to me. She ushered me inside and gave me a warm beverage. But I couldn't think about anything except the fear that was coursing through my mind and heart. You lied to me. Obscura, this place is hell on earth, I told her, briefly describing the ritual to her. She didn't even flinch. I already knew why. It was likely the same thing that occurred to the real Leah when she had died years ago. The Order was supposed to have our best interests at heart, Leah said with a deep sigh. The Order? I repeated, recalling the strange chants and carvings on the floor. The Levonic Order, to be exact. It's a cult. They control this company. Consider them like the Illuminati, except far more dangerous and far more real, she answered gravely as she sipped her tea. How the hell does a cult have control over a porn company? And maybe more importantly, why? I asked in exasperation. My hands were shaking. And what this Fox person was telling me only made me more and more frightened. I only know some details. They're recruiting people. For what purpose, I don't know. There's a place they took me once. Called it White Valley. They said when the time was right that they would be needed again. If it wasn't for Logan, I know I would be at their mercy more than I am. That only led to more questions. I needed to know her relationship to that strange man that had saved my life. I can't tonight. Mr. Kelly is expecting me to shoot a scene tomorrow bright and early. He said that after that I could take a vacation. Once I get done, we can see Logan together, get the answers together. Sound fair? I asked. She told me yes and wearily collapsed on her couch. I felt like it was going to be the end of it, sweet and simple, but things didn't work that way. I woke up to the sound of a struggle not long after that. 2 well-fit men were struggling to pin Leah down and force her to swallow a pill. A third was just standing over me with a gun at his side. He hadn't noticed I was awake yet, but Leah had. Her eyes darted onto the cushion where I had laid my head. I didn't hesitate to reach there and feel for a pistol nestled safely underneath. Just as the third man realized that I was awake, I pulled the gun out and shot him right in the face. His screams distracted the 2 other men, and Leah kicked them off and stood up again. And I fired again. The man stumbled back and tripped over something on the floor. He was impaled by Leah's coat rack as the other 2 men moved toward me. I aimed to fire again, but then realized that the weapon had no more bullets. Run! Leah shouted. I tossed the empty firearm to the man's face and made it to the door. Leah was crawling out her window. Her car was parked about 19 yards away. I ran like I had never before. Made it in 13 seconds. Leah was stumbling across the trailer park. I could see that she was clutching her side where a trickle of blood was dripping out. I revved the engine as I saw the two attackers rush toward her. Shifting to drive, I hit the gas and went straight towards them. Leah rolled out of the way and I smashed them in and watched their bodies roll over the hooded Corvette. Then I made a U-turn and went over them a second time. I heard bones crunch. I barely caught my breath as Leah stood up and crawled into the passenger side. I was trying to figure out what had just happened. Behind us were the two attackers already standing up again, as though everything I had done to them hadn't fazed their bodies at all. What the hell? I literally said out loud. Drive, Leah told me. She peeled out of the parking lot, going 70. We need to get you to the hospital, I told her once again as we were out of the studio lot. Can't. Too dangerous. We need to get Logan, she told me as she struggled to stay conscious. I didn't feel like arguing with her. She passed me her phone and I made the call, but it only went to voicemail. Now what? I asked nervously. We were sitting at the truck stop near the Nevada border heading north. I was certain those two thugs were still hunting for us. I turned to face Leah for advice, but then realized she had blacked out. She had lost too much blood. I looked toward the truck stop, said a prayer, and ran inside. I needed something to sew her up. There were a few drivers eating their breakfast and eyeing my petite frame as I came in. I figured out which one had the deepest pocketbook and took him to the bathroom for a quickie. 10 minutes later, I had what I needed for Leah. I opened up the passenger side door and gently lifted her shirt up to check the wound. It was deep, and still more blood was seeping out. I had gauze, alcohol, a needle and thread, and some duct tape. I didn't worry too much about hurting her. I just didn't want her to die. As I was finishing up half the stitching, I heard a door close behind me and I flinched. Nobody could have spotted our hiding spot behind the diner amid the trees. It had to be the thugs. I reached over to the driver's side door and tried to desperately call Logan again. Sure enough, I saw two burly men walking towards me, this time with weapons out and anger on their faces. I didn't have anything to defend myself with. I decided to crawl into the back of the car and pop the trunk. A small tire iron lay on the cushion. It was better than nothing. The men were almost at the car, and I heard the sound of a Glock being loaded, and I saw them coming out of the tree line. I swung the tire iron hard, smashing it against one of the man's ankles. He cursed in pain and as I stood up and aimed for his head. The second man shot his weapon straight through the front window. They were still after Leah. Was I just in the way? I banged the iron against the first man and came barreling around the car towards the second. Now his gun was trained on me. A bullet grazed my shoulder and I slammed my makeshift weapon against his right arm. Behind me I saw the first man was standing up, except that a portion of his face was missing now. Beneath there it looked like some sort of distorted, burnt version of the same man. Small pockets of that black goo were forming near the edges of his flesh. He limped toward me, raising his gun to fire, and again when another sound ripped across the air. Something from the left smashed against the thug, slamming him to the ground. I clenched the tire iron, trying to see who it might be. Logan came out of the trees holding what looked like a military-grade weapon. He aimed for the second man and blew his head clean off before he could even stand up. "Get Leah away from me. I'm going to blow them sky high," he said. I ran to the passenger side of the car and carried her over my shoulder. She was twice my size, but the adrenaline pushed me to do what I didn't think I could. We collapsed near the edge of the dirt road where I saw Logan had parked a black-tinted van. A roaring explosion ignited the western sky. Logan returned a moment later. He looked exhausted and determined to kill more if he needed to. "What were those things?" I asked as he unlocked the van and helped me to get Leah inside. He was ignoring my questions and checking to see what sort of wounds my friend had endured. "Shit," he said as he saw the same dark liquid begin to seep out of Leah's body. It was that same organism that had controlled those two men. He reached across her and grabbed a gas can. He then began to douse Leah with the liquid. "Wait, what are you doing? She needs help!" I screamed. "It's too late. The body's been compromised. The organism is leaving to find another host. If we don't act now, it's going to be us," he said. I was pushing to try to stop him. Logan pushed me out of the van in retaliation and then lit a match. I watched as Leah's body was torched. The mysterious black slime made it almost ghoulish of streaks as he was burnt alive. I didn't stop watching until the flames consumed most of the van, and then Leah was gone.